Captain Sarah Chun pulled her helmet off and shook out her black hair as she climbed down from the F-16 Fighting Falcon. Sweat dripped down her forehead despite the cool morning air at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. Another perfect training flight, another flawless landing, another day of being invisible to the brass who made the important decisions. She had been flying F-16s for 6 years now. 6 years of perfect scores on every evaluation. 6 years of leading training missions without a single incident. 6 years of watching male pilots with half her experience get selected for advanced programs while she remained stuck in the same squadron. "Nice flying out there," Chun called out Lieutenant Jake Morrison as he jogged past her toward the briefing room. Jake had been in the Air Force for only 3 years, but he was already being considered for the F-22 Raptor program, the most advanced fighter jet in the world, and somehow Sarah never even got an interview. She nodded at Jake and continued walking toward the locker room. Her flight suit was soaked with perspiration, not from fear or stress, but from pure concentration. Every time she flew, she pushed herself harder than necessary. Every maneuver had to be perfect. Every decision had to be flawless. She knew that as a woman in a male-dominated field, she couldn't afford even the smallest mistake. In the locker room, she changed into her regular uniform and checked her reflection in the mirror. At 32, she looked younger than most of the pilots in her squadron. Her Korean-American heritage gave her delicate features that some of the older officers mistook for fragility. They couldn't have been more wrong. Growing up in Sacramento, California, Sarah had always been fascinated by airplanes. Her father, Dr. David Chun, was an aerospace engineer who worked on military contracts. Her mother, Lisa, was a high school math teacher. Both parents encouraged her interest in aviation, but they also warned her about the challenges she would face as a woman in the military. "You'll have to work twice as hard to get half the recognition," her father had told her when she announced her intention to join the Air Force. "But if anyone can do it, you can." Those words echoed in her mind every day as she watched less qualified pilots advance past her. She had graduated top of her class from the Air Force Academy. She had finished first in pilot training. She had the highest scores in air-to-air combat exercises. Yet somehow, she was still flying the same aircraft she had been assigned 6 years ago. The afternoon briefing was led by Colonel Marcus Webb, a veteran pilot who commanded respect throughout the squadron. He was one of the few officers who seemed to judge pilots based on their abilities rather than their gender. Sarah always paid close attention during his briefings. "Tomorrow we're hosting a delegation from Washington," Colonel Webb announced to the assembled pilots. "Some Pentagon officials want to observe our training operations. I want everyone sharp. No mistakes, no showboating, just solid professional flying." Sarah raised her hand. "Sir, what aircraft will be involved in the demonstration?" "Standard formation, flying with F-16s, the colonel replied. "Chun, I want you leading the formation. You have the steadiest hands in the squadron." A few of the male pilots exchanged glances. Sarah could feel their resentment. They viewed her consistent selection for high-profile demonstrations as political correctness rather than recognition of her skills. She had learned to ignore their attitudes, but it still stung. After the briefing, she walked to the flight line to inspect her aircraft for the next day's mission. The sun was setting over the Nevada desert, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. The F-16s lined up on the tarmac looked like sleeping eagles, waiting for dawn to soar again. Staff Sergeant Mike Rodriguez, her crew chief, was already performing the pre-flight inspection. Mike had been working on fighter jets for 15 years and had seen hundreds of pilots come and go. He was one of the few people on the base who openly acknowledged Sarah's superior flying abilities. "She's ready for tomorrow, Captain," Mike said, patting the side of the F-16. "Fresh engine, all systems checked twice. This bird will do whatever you ask of her." "Thanks, Mike. I know she's in good hands with you." Mike hesitated for a moment, then looked around to make sure no one else was listening. "Captain, can I speak freely?" "Of course. I've been watching these pilots for a long time. I've seen the good ones and the not-so-good ones. You're the best pilot I've ever worked with, and that includes some real hotshots who went on to fly F-22s. He paused, choosing his words carefully. "It's not right that you're still here while guys with half your talent are getting advanced assignments." Sarah felt a warmth in her chest. Recognition from experienced enlisted personnel meant more to her than any official commendation. I appreciate that, Mike. Really. But I just have to keep doing my job and trust that the right opportunity will come along. Yes, ma'am. But when it does, you'll be ready. That night, Sarah sat in her small apartment off base, reviewing flight manuals and studying tactical procedures. Her walls were covered with aviation photographs and technical diagrams. A shelf held her collection of model aircraft, each one representing a different phase of her flying career. Her phone rang, and she saw her father's number on the display. Dad. Sarah, how are you doing? Your mother and I were just talking about you. I'm Fine, just preparing for a demonstration flight tomorrow. Some Pentagon officials are coming to observe. That sounds important. Are you leading the mission? Yes, Colonel Webb selected me to lead the formation. There was pride in her father's voice. That's wonderful. You know, when I was working on the F-22 project, I used to tell my colleagues that the most important quality in a pilot wasn't physical strength or aggressive personality. It was precision, judgment, and the ability to stay calm under pressure. You have all those qualities. Thanks, Dad. Sometimes I wonder if it's enough. It's more than enough. The right people will recognize your abilities when the time comes. You just have to be patient and stay ready. After hanging up, Sarah looked out her window at the lights of Las Vegas in the distance. Somewhere out there, important decisions were being made about military aviation programs. Budgets were being allocated, personnel were being selected, and the future of air combat was being shaped. She wondered if she would ever be more than a spectator in those decisions. The next morning arrived with typical Nevada sunshine and cloudless skies. Perfect flying weather. Sarah arrived at the squadron building early to review the flight plan one more time. The demonstration would involve 4 F-16s flying in diamond formation, followed by individual aerobatic displays showcasing the aircraft's capabilities. Colonel Webb gathered the selected pilots for a final briefing. Besides Sarah, the formation included Jake Morrison, Captain Tony Rodriguez, and Major Bill Harrison, all experienced pilots, though Sarah had more flight hours than the other 3 combined. Remember, this is about showing our capabilities, not about individual heroics, the colonel emphasized. Stay tight, stay professional, and follow Captain Chen's lead. As they walked to their aircraft, Major Harrison fell in his step beside Sarah. Bill was a good pilot, and one of the few who treated her with genuine respect rather than patronizing courtesy. Chen, I've been meaning to ask you something, he said quietly. Have you ever applied for the F-22 program? 3 times, she replied without hesitation. And not selected for interview each time. Bill frowned. That's insane. You're the best pilot in this squadron, probably the best I've ever flown with. Apparently the selection board doesn't agree. Well, their loss is our gain. But it still doesn't seem right. They reached their aircraft, and Sarah began her pre-flight inspection with methodical precision. Every switch, every gauge, every connection had to be perfect. Mike had already completed his inspection, but Sarah always did her own thorough check. It was a habit that had saved her life more than once during her career. As she climbed into the cockpit, Sarah felt the familiar surge of excitement that came before every flight. No matter how routine the mission, no matter how many times she had performed the same maneuvers, flying still thrilled her. The F-16 was an extension of her body, responding to her thoughts and intentions with mechanical precision. The Pentagon officials arrived in a convoy of black SUVs, stepping out onto the tarmac in their suits and dark sunglasses. Sarah could see them through her cockpit glass as she completed her pre-flight checks. Among them was a woman in a Navy uniform with admiral stripes. Sarah wondered if she might find an ally in another female officer who had broken through the military's glass ceiling. Tiger Flight, this is Tower, came the voice through her headset. You are cleared for takeoff. Winds are calm, visibility unlimited. Tower, Tiger lead, understood. Tiger Flight, check in. Tiger 2, ready. Tiger 3, ready. Tiger 4, ready. Sarah advanced her throttle and felt the familiar push of acceleration as the F-16's engine spooled up to full power. The aircraft rolled down the runway, gathering speed until the moment when physics and engineering combined to lift 25,000 pounds of metal and fuel into the sky. They climbed to 5,000 feet and formed up in perfect diamond formation. Sarah could see the other aircraft in her peripheral vision, their positions held with mathematical precision. This was what she lived for, the moment when 4 separate aircraft became one coordinated unit, moving through the sky with purpose and grace. Tiger Lead, this is base control. Looking good for down here. Pentagon guests are impressed with the formation integrity. Sarah smiled inside her helmet. Formation flying was an art form that required not just individual skill, but the ability to anticipate and react to the movements of other pilots. It demanded trust, communication, and split-second timing. These are skills that couldn't be taught in a classroom or measured on a written test. They flew the planned route over the Nevada desert, maintaining perfect formation through gentle turns and altitude changes. Sarah could feel the rhythm of the other pilots, their breathing patterns transmitted through subtle aircraft movements. This was flying at its highest level, not just controlling an aircraft, but becoming part of something larger and more complex. The individual aerobatic demonstrations went flawlessly. Each pilot showed off the F-16's capabilities through a series of loops, rolls, and high-speed passes. Sarah saved her routine for last, performing a sequence she had been perfecting for months. It combined technical precision with artistic flair, showcasing not just what the aircraft could do, but how a skilled pilot could make it seem to dance in the air. As she pulled out of her final maneuver and headed back to base, Sarah felt the satisfaction that came from a perfect performance. Whatever the Pentagon officials thought of the demonstration, she knew she had shown them the best that American military aviation had to offer. Back on the ground, the officials gathered around Colonel Webb for a debrief. Sarah hung back with the other pilots, trying to hear snippets of conversation. The woman admiral was asking detailed questions about pilot training and selection procedures. Colonel Webb, the admiral, said, "That was an exceptional demonstration, particularly the formation leader, Captain Shun, I believe. Her flying was absolutely flawless." "Yes, ma'am. Captain Shun is one of our finest pilots." "What advanced programs has she been selected for?" There was a pause. Sarah could see Colonel Webb's discomfort from across the tarmac. "She hasn't been selected for advanced programs yet, Admiral, but she's certainly qualified." The Admiral's expression hardened slightly. "I see. Well, that's an interesting personnel decision." After the officials departed, Sarah returned to the squadron building to complete her post-flight paperwork. The other pilots were already there, discussing the mission and speculating about what the Pentagon visitors had thought. "Did you see that Admiral asking about you?" Jake Morrison said to Sarah. "She seemed pretty interested in your background." "Probably just curious about the formation leader," Sarah replied, though she had noticed the Admiral's questions as well. Colonel Webb entered the room, looking thoughtful. "Excellent flying today, everyone. The Pentagon guests were very impressed with our capabilities." He paused, then looked directly at Sarah. "Captain Shun, I need to see you in my office." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Had she done something wrong? Had the Admiral complained about something? She followed the colonel down the hall to his office, her mind racing through possibilities. Webb closed the door and gestured for her to sit down. "Sarah, I'm going to speak frankly. Admiral Patricia Hawkins was very interested in your performance today. She asked some pointed questions about your career progression. Did I do something inappropriate, sir?" "Quite the opposite. She was impressed by your flying and curious about why someone with your qualifications hasn't advanced to more challenging assignments." The colonel leaned back in his chair. "She's the Deputy Director of Air Combat Systems at the Pentagon. She has significant influence over pilot assignments and program selections." Sarah felt a flutter of hope, but tried to keep her expression neutral. "I see. She left me her contact information and specifically asked me to send her your complete service record." Colonel Webb handed her a business card. "I think you might be hearing from the Pentagon soon." That evening, Sarah stared at the business card on her kitchen table. Admiral Patricia Hawkins, Deputy Director of Air Combat Systems. The title alone suggested enormous influence over the programs Sarah had been trying to access for years. She picked up her phone to call her father, then hesitated. She had been disappointed too many times before. Better to wait and see what actually happened before raising her hopes too high. But as she prepared for bed, Sarah allowed herself a small moment of optimism. Maybe, just maybe, her years of patient excellence were finally going to pay off. Maybe someone with real power had finally noticed that talent and dedication should matter more than politics and preconceptions. Outside her window, the lights of Nellis Air Force Base twinkled in the darkness. Somewhere on those runways sat the F-16s she had been flying for 6 years. And somewhere else in the country, at other bases, sat the F-22 Raptors that represented the pinnacle of fighter aircraft technology. Sarah fell asleep that night dreaming of flying at 50,000 feet, invisible to radar, armed with the most advanced weapons systems ever created. In her dreams, she wasn't an overlooked captain stuck in the same assignment year after year. She was an elite pilot trusted with the nation's most sophisticated aircraft. She had no way of knowing that within 72 hours, those dreams would suddenly become reality in ways she never could have imagined. The phone rang at 5:47 a.m., jarring Sarah from deep sleep. She fumbled for her cell phone on the nightstand, squinting at the unknown number with a Washington, D.C. area code. Captain Chin speaking. Captain, this is Admiral Hawkins from the Pentagon. I apologize for the early hour, but we have a situation that requires immediate attention. Sarah sat up quickly, her mind instantly alert. Yes, ma'am. I need you to pack a bag and report to Edwards Air Force Base in California within 6 hours. You're being temporarily assigned to a classified program. Can you make that timeline? Absolutely, Admiral. Excellent. Report to Building 1840 when you arrive. Ask for Colonel James Mitchell. He'll brief you on the details. And Captain, yes, ma'am. What you're about to be involved in will likely change your career trajectory permanently. Are you prepared for that level of responsibility? Sarah felt her heart hammering against her ribs. I've been ready my entire career, Admiral. Good. Safe travels. The line went dead. Sarah stared at her phone for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. 3 days ago, she was an overlooked F-16 pilot. Now she was being summoned to Edwards Air Force Base for a classified assignment that could change her career permanently. She threw clothes into her flight bag, her mind racing with possibilities. Edwards was home to the Air Force Test Pilot School and numerous experimental aircraft programs. It was where the most advanced aviation technology in the world was developed and tested. Whatever they wanted her for, it was significant. The drive from Las Vegas to Edwards took 4 hours through the Mojave Desert. Sarah used the time to mentally prepare for whatever awaited her. She had learned long ago not to get her hopes up too high, but something about Admiral Hawkins' call felt different. This wasn't another routine assignment or another disappointment. This felt like the opportunity she had been waiting for. Edwards Air Force Base sprawled across thousands of acres of desert, its runways extending for miles across the flat landscape. Sarah had been here before for various training exercises, but she had never been assigned to any of the classified programs that operated behind security fences and coded building numbers. Building 1840 was a nondescript concrete structure surrounded by additional security barriers. Sarah presented her identification to the guards and was escorted inside. The interior was surprisingly modern, with high-tech security scanners and multiple checkpoint stations. Colonel James Mitchell met her in a sterile briefing room. He was a tall, lean man with graying hair and the confident bearing of an experienced test pilot. His uniform displayed the silver wings of a command pilot and ribbons indicating extensive combat experience. Captain Shun, welcome to Edwards. I'm Colonel Mitchell, commander of the 412th Test Wing. He gestured for her to take a seat. Before we begin, I need to confirm your security clearance level. Top secret with SCI access, sir. Good. What I'm about to tell you is classified at levels beyond your current clearance, but you're being read into the program effective immediately. He activated a tablet and pulled up several documents. 3 hours ago, we lost one of our most experienced F-22 pilots to a medical emergency. Captain David Park suffered a massive stroke during pre-flight preparations for a critical test mission. Sarah felt a chill. She knew Dave Park by reputation. He was considered one of the finest Raptor pilots in the Air Force. The mission involves testing new defensive countermeasures against advanced surface-to-air missile systems. The data we collect will determine tactical procedures for potential operations in contested airspace. Colonel Mitchell looked directly at Sarah. We need a replacement pilot immediately. Someone with exceptional flying skills and the ability to adapt quickly to new aircraft systems. Sir, I've never flown an F-22. That's why you're here. We have 48 hours to get you qualified and mission ready. Admiral Hawkins reviewed your complete service record and performance evaluations. She believes you can handle the transition. Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and terror. The F-22 Raptor was the most advanced fighter aircraft ever built. Its stealth capabilities, super cruise engines, and integrated avionics systems were decades ahead of anything else in the world. Pilots typically spent months in training before being certified to fly solo. What exactly does the mission involve? Colonel Mitchell activated a wall display showing tactical diagrams and flight profiles. We're testing a new electronic warfare system against simulated S-400 and S-500 missile batteries. The mission requires flying at extremely low altitudes through defended airspace while gathering intelligence data. One mistake could result in catastrophic failure of both the aircraft and the pilot. The weight of responsibility settled on Sarah's shoulders. This wasn't a training exercise or a demonstration flight. This was a real-world test of capabilities that could influence American air power for decades to come. Sir, when do we start training? Right now. Your instructor is already waiting. They walked across the tarmac to a massive hangar marked only with numbers and security warnings. Inside, Sarah got her first close look at an F-22 Raptor. The aircraft was stunning, its angular surfaces and exotic materials giving it an almost alien appearance. Every line had been designed to defeat radar, every surface engineered to minimize electromagnetic signature. Captain Chun, meet Major Lisa Santos, our senior F-22 instructor pilot. Major Santos was a compact woman with short brown hair and the intense focus that Sarah recognized in all elite pilots. She approached with a confident stride and firm handshake. Captain, I've reviewed your F-16 performance records. Very impressive. But I need you to understand that the Raptor is a completely different animal. The system's integration alone will challenge everything you think you know about flying fighters. Sarah nodded. I'm ready to learn, ma'am. Good. We're going to compress 6 months of training into 2 days. It's been done before, but only with pilots who have exceptional natural ability and total dedication. Are you prepared for that intensity? Yes, ma'am. The next 18 hours were the most challenging of Sarah's flying career. She began with computer-based training modules covering every system on the F-22. The aircraft's capabilities were staggering. It could cruise at supersonic speeds without afterburners. Its radar could track multiple targets while remaining invisible to enemy sensors, and its weapons systems could engage threats at ranges previously impossible. But with advanced capabilities came complexity. The F-22 had thousands of systems and subsystems, all integrated through computer networks that required constant pilot monitoring and input. Sarah found herself studying technical manuals until her eyes burned, memorizing procedures for situations she had never encountered in the F-16. Major Santos proved to be a demanding but excellent instructor. She pushed Sarah through simulated emergencies, system failures, and combat scenarios at a relentless pace. But she also recognized Sarah's natural abilities and began to trust her with increasingly complex training exercises. Your spatial awareness is exceptional, Major Santos commented during a break between simulator sessions. Most pilots take weeks to develop comfort with the F-22's flight envelope. You're adapting faster than anyone I've trained. The aircraft feels familiar somehow, Sarah replied. like it responds to intentions rather than just control inputs. That's exactly right. The F-22 was designed to be an extension of the pilot's mind. But that level of integration only works with pilots who have the right instincts and training. On the second day, they moved to actual flight training. Sarah's first taxi test in the F-22 was a revelation. The aircraft felt alive beneath her hands, every control movement producing immediate and precise responses. The engine power was beyond anything she had experienced. The twin Pratt and Whitney turbofans could accelerate the aircraft from idle to maximum power in seconds. Her first flight lasted only 30 minutes, but it changed her understanding of what was possible in aviation. The F-22 didn't just fly, it commanded the sky. Its radar could see targets hundreds of miles away while remaining completely invisible to enemy sensors. Its maneuverability defied physics, capable of movements that would tear apart conventional aircraft. How did that feel? Major Santos asked after they landed. Like I've been flying with one hand tied behind my back for my entire career, Sarah replied honestly. Good. That means you're beginning to understand what this aircraft can do. Tomorrow we start the mission-specific training. That night, Sarah called her father from her temporary quarters on base. Dad, I can't tell you where I am or what I'm doing, but I wanted you to know that everything you taught me about persistence and preparation has led to this moment. You sound excited but nervous. Are you in some kind of special program? I can't say over the phone, but I want you to know that if something happens to me in the next few days, I'm doing exactly what I always dreamed of doing. There was concern in her father's voice. Sarah, are you in danger? I'm doing my job, Dad. The job we both knew involved risks when I chose this career. But I'm also being trusted with responsibilities I've worked my entire life to earn. Then, I'm proud of you, sweetheart. Your mother and I have always known you were destined for something special. The next morning brought advanced tactical training. Sarah learned to operate the F-22's sophisticated electronic warfare systems, designed to jam enemy radars while gathering intelligence data. The mission would require her to fly at treetop level through simulated enemy territory, using the aircraft's stealth capabilities and terrain masking to avoid detection. Colonel Mitchell joined them for the final briefing. Captain Shun, the test we're conducting will validate tactics for potential operations against near-peer adversaries. The data you collect will influence combat procedures for years to come. Understand, sir. The simulated missile systems we're testing against represent the most advanced threats in the world. They're designed to defeat stealth aircraft like the F-22. Your job is to prove that superior pilot skills and tactics can overcome technological advantages. The weight of the mission pressed down on Sarah. She wasn't just flying an aircraft. She was validating the entire concept of air superiority in future conflicts. Success could save countless lives in future wars. Failure could expose vulnerabilities that enemies might exploit. Major Santos conducted the final aircraft inspection with Sarah. Every system had to be perfect, every component operating at maximum efficiency. The margin for error on this mission was 0. Remember everything we've practiced, Major Santos said as Sarah climbed into the cockpit. Trust your training, trust your instincts, and trust this aircraft. The F-22 will do things you never thought possible, but only if you let it. As Sarah strapped into the ejection seat and began her pre-flight checks, she felt a calm focus settling over her mind. This was the moment she had been preparing for since childhood. Every hour of study, every training flight, every disappointing rejection had led to this opportunity. The F-22 systems came online with electronic precision. Radar displays flickered to life, showing a three-dimensional picture of the airspace around Edwards. The aircraft's computers ran through thousands of diagnostic checks, confirming that every system was operating perfectly. Edwards Tower, Raptor 01 ready for departure. Raptor 01, you're cleared for takeoff. Winds calm, visibility unlimited. Sarah advanced the throttles and felt the familiar surge of acceleration, but magnified beyond anything she had experienced before. The F-22 rolled down the runway with purpose and authority, its engines producing enough thrust to lift the aircraft vertically if required. As the gear retracted and they climbed toward the test area, Sarah reviewed the mission parameters one final time. She would fly a low-level route through the Mojave Desert, simulating penetration of heavily defended airspace. Electronic warfare simulators would replicate the most advanced missile systems in the world, trying to lock on her aircraft and guide simulated weapons to intercept. Her job was to avoid detection while gathering intelligence data that would prove American pilots could overcome technological threats through superior training and tactics. It was a mission that could validate decades of investment in stealth technology and pilot development. But as Sarah leveled off at cruising altitude and headed toward the test range, she had no way of knowing that the simulated mission was about to become very real indeed. Unknown to anyone at Edwards, an international incident was developing that would require the immediate deployment of America's most advanced fighter aircraft. And Captain Sarah Chun, after 6 years of being overlooked and underestimated, was about to find herself at the center of the most important air combat mission in recent memory. Sarah was 20 minutes into her test mission when the emergency call came through her encrypted communication system. The voice belonged to General Patricia Rodriguez, commander of Air Combat Command, speaking directly from the Pentagon. Raptor 01, this is Command Authority. Terminate current exercise immediately and return to base for urgent mission briefing. Sarah's blood chilled. Command Authority was a code phrase used only during national emergencies or imminent military action. Whatever was happening, it was serious enough to pull her off a critical test flight. Command Authority, Raptor 01 copies. Returning to base immediately. She banked the F-22 hard to the left and pushed the throttles forward, feeling the aircraft surge toward Edwards at nearly twice the speed of sound. The desert landscape blurred beneath her as she covered distances that would take hours by car in a matter of minutes. The control tower at Edwards directed her straight to a secure hangar where Colonel Mitchell was waiting with a team of personnel she didn't recognize. Their uniforms indicated various special operations units and intelligence agencies. Whatever this briefing involved, it was far beyond the scope of a routine test mission. As Sarah shut down the F-22's engines and climbed out of the cockpit, she noticed increased security around the hangar. Armed guards had taken positions at every entrance, and several black SUVs with government plates were parked nearby. "Captain Chun, we need you in the briefing room immediately," Colonel Mitchell called out. His usual calm demeanor had been replaced by urgent intensity. The briefing room had been transformed into a command center. Multiple screens displayed satellite imagery, intelligence reports, and real-time communications from various military units around the world. At the center of it all stood Admiral Hawkins, who had flown in from Washington, and a Navy SEAL commander Sarah didn't recognize. "Captain, I'm Commander Jake Ramsey, Naval Special Warfare Command." The SEAL introduced himself. "We have a developing situation that requires immediate F-22 support." Admiral Hawkins activated the main display screen. 47 minutes ago, a civilian airliner was hijacked over international waters in the South China Sea. Malaysia Airlines Flight 447 with 312 passengers and crew aboard. Sarah felt her stomach drop. Hijacked airliners brought back memories of September 11th and the horror that followed. The aircraft deviated from its flight plan and is now heading toward a heavily populated area of the Philippines, Admiral Hawkins continued. Initial communications suggest the hijackers intend to use the aircraft as a weapon against civilian targets. Commander Ramsey stepped forward. "We have a SEAL team positioned on a Navy destroyer in the area, but they need air support to intercept the aircraft before it reaches populated areas. The problem is that the hijackers have military-grade surface-to-air missile systems." The tactical situation became clear to Sarah immediately. A heavily defended target requiring precision flying and split-second timing. Exactly the type of mission the F-22 was designed for. "What's our intelligence on hijackers?" Sarah asked. "International terrorist organization with access to advanced weaponry. Admiral Hawkins replied. They've somehow gotten hold of Russian-made F-24 missiles, capable of engaging targets at 30,000 feet. Conventional fighters would be sitting ducks. Colonel Mitchell pulled up a tactical diagram. The airliner is currently at cruising altitude, approximately 200 miles from Manila. Our window for interception is narrowing rapidly. What are my orders? Sarah asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Commander Ramsey looked directly at her. We need you to escort the airliner away from populated areas while our SEAL team attempts a boarding operation. If they're unsuccessful, you may be ordered to prevent the aircraft from reaching its target by any means necessary. The weight of those words settled on Sarah like a physical burden. She was being asked to potentially shoot down a civilian airliner full of innocent passengers to prevent an even greater catastrophe. It was the nightmare scenario that every fighter pilot prayed they would never face. How long do I have to prepare? 30 minutes, Admiral Hawkins replied. We're launching you with maximum fuel and full air-to-air armament. The carrier USS Ronald Reagan is positioning to provide aerial refueling if needed. Sarah nodded grimly. I'll need updated intelligence on the hijackers' capabilities and the latest position of the aircraft. Already being uploaded to your mission computer, Colonel Mitchell assured her. Captain, I know this isn't what you expected when you volunteered for this program. No, sir, but it's exactly why programs like this exist. The next 25 minutes passed in a blur of mission planning and aircraft preparation. Sarah studied every detail of the hijacked airliner, its flight characteristics, and the capabilities of the weapons systems the terrorists possessed. She memorized the faces of the flight crew and reviewed emergency procedures for civilian aircraft. Major Santos helped her into her flight gear, checking every connection and system with methodical precision. Sarah, this is going to require everything you've learned about the F-22, plus instinct you didn't know you had. I know. The aircraft will do its job. I just have to do mine. Remember, the Raptor's stealth capabilities will keep you invisible until you choose to reveal yourself. Use that advantage. Don't let them see you coming until it's too late for them to react. As Sarah climbed back into the F-22's cockpit, she felt the familiar calm that always preceded dangerous missions. Fear and anxiety were luxuries she couldn't afford. There were 312 innocent lives depending on her skills and judgment. The pre-flight checks went smoothly, but this time the weapons systems were armed with live missiles. AIM-120 AMRAAMs for long-range engagement and AIM-9 Sidewinders for close combat. Sarah prayed she wouldn't need to use either of them. Raptor 01, this is Edwards Control. You are cleared for immediate departure. Priority routing to the Pacific. Edwards Control, Raptor 01 departing. The F-22 lifted off into the afternoon sky and climbed rapidly toward its cruising altitude of 50,000 feet. At that height, Sarah was above most commercial air traffic and could cruise at supersonic speeds without creating sonic booms that would alert ground observers. As she flew west toward the Pacific Ocean, Sarah received constant updates on the hijacked airliner. Malaysia Airlines 447 was maintaining course toward the Philippines, ignoring all attempts at radio communication. Satellite imagery showed the aircraft's exterior appeared normal, with no visible signs of damage or modification. Raptor 01, this is Overlord, came a new voice through her encrypted radio. Sarah recognized the call sign as belonging to the Airborne Command and Control aircraft coordinating the operation. Overlord, Raptor 01, go ahead. Target aircraft is now 120 miles from Manila. We're running out of time for a peaceful resolution. SEAL team is preparing for boarding operation, but they need the airliner to descend to lower altitude. Understood. What's my role in the boarding operation? You'll need to force the aircraft down to 5,000 feet while staying clear of their missile engagement envelope. The SEALs will then attempt a helicopter insertion onto the aircraft. Sarah studied the tactical display on her instrument panel. The hijacked Boeing 777 was a massive aircraft, nearly 200 feet long, with a wingspan that exceeded 200 feet. Getting close enough to force it down without being hit by missiles would require precision, flying at the limits of both aircraft's capabilities. Overlord, I'll need to know the exact location of the missile systems on the target aircraft. Intelligence suggests they have portable launchers positioned near the emergency exits. Maximum range approximately 20 miles, but accuracy decreases significantly against maneuvering targets. 20 miles. Sarah calculated quickly in her head. If she approached from the right angle and used the F-22's superior speed and agility, she could force the airliner down while staying outside the effective range of the missiles. As she approached the intercept point, Sarah activated the F-22's advanced radar systems. The display immediately showed the hijacked airliner, exactly where intelligence had predicted. The Boeing 777 was flying straight and level, apparently confident that no one could intercept them. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Overlord, Raptor 01 has visual contact with target aircraft. Beginning approach. Sarah pushed the F-22 into a high-speed dive, using gravity and engine power to close the distance rapidly. The stealth coating on her aircraft meant the hijackers' radar wouldn't detect her until she was practically on top of them. At 10 miles from the target, she pulled out of the dive and began a high-speed approach from the airliner's blind spot. The F-22's speed was now nearly 3 times that of the hijacked aircraft, allowing her to close the final distance in seconds. At 2 miles, Sarah pulled alongside the Boeing 777 and activated her radio on the international emergency frequency. Malaysia Airlines 447. This is United States Air Force. You're ordered to descend immediately to 5,000 feet and follow my lead to the nearest airport. The response came immediately, not over the radio, but in the form of a surface-to-air missile launched from the airliner's cabin. The SA-24 streaked past Sarah's cockpit, missing by less than 100 feet. Overlord, taking missile fire from target aircraft. They're definitely hostile. Sarah rolled the F-22 inverted and pulled hard to avoid a second missile. The hijackers had modified the Boeing 777 extensively, creating firing ports in the fuselage for their weapons. This wasn't just a hijacking, it was a military operation. Raptor 01, you are authorized to use necessary force to neutralize the threat. Sarah's training took over. She positioned the F-22 above and behind the airliner in the blind spot of their missile systems. From this position, she could fire warning shots that would damage the aircraft's control surfaces without harming passengers. But as she lined up her shot, Sarah noticed something that made her heart skip a beat. Through the airliner's windows, she could see passengers pressed against the glass, watching the aerial ballet taking place outside. Among them were children, their faces filled with terror. Those innocent faces reminded her why she had become a pilot in the first place. Not to destroy, but to protect. Not to take lives, but to save them. Overlord, I see passengers at the windows. Request permission to attempt non-lethal interception. Raptor 01, what do you have in mind? Sarah had an idea that was either brilliant or suicidal. The F-22's advanced fly-by-wire system could perform maneuvers that would be impossible in conventional aircraft. If she could position herself directly in front of the airliner and gradually reduce speed, she might be able to force it down without firing a shot. I'm going to try to box them in and force a descent through aerodynamic pressure. Negative, Raptor 01. Too dangerous. You could cause a mid-air collision. But Sarah was already moving into position. She brought the F-22 directly in front of the Boeing 777, close enough that the airliner's pilots would have no choice but to react to her presence. Using her aircraft's superior maneuverability, she began a series of gentle S-turns that created turbulence in the airliner's flight path. The effect was immediate. The Boeing 777 began to descend as its pilots tried to avoid the wake turbulence from Sarah's aircraft. She had successfully forced them down without firing a single shot. Overlord, target aircraft descending. Estimate 5,000 feet in 2 minutes. Outstanding work, Raptor 01. SEAL team is inbound for boarding operation. As the hijacked airliner descended toward the ocean, Sarah maintained her position just ahead and above, ready to react if the terrorists tried any new tactics. In the distance, she could see the Navy helicopters approaching for the most dangerous part of the operation. What happened next would determine whether 312 innocent people lived or died. And Captain Sarah Chun, the pilot who had been overlooked for so many years, found herself at the center of the most important mission of her career. The SEAL helicopters approached the descending airliner like mechanical hawks, their rotors chopping through the humid Pacific air. Sarah maintained her position above and slightly ahead of Malaysia Airlines 447, ready to react if the terrorists attempted any desperate moves. Overlord, Sea Knight 1 beginning approach to target aircraft, came the voice of the helicopter pilot. Raptor 01, we'll need you to keep that bird steady while we attempt insertion. Sarah acknowledged the transmission while watching her instruments carefully. The hijacked Boeing 777 was now at 4,800 feet and descending slowly. The pilots, whether they were terrorist-controlled or trying to cooperate with the rescue attempt, were maintaining relatively stable flight. Through her canopy, Sarah could see the lead helicopter moving into position above the airliner's fuselage. The operation they were attempting was incredibly dangerous. SEALs would fast rope onto the moving aircraft and then breach the passenger cabin to neutralize the hijackers. One mistake could result in catastrophic failure. Suddenly, Sarah's radar warning system began screaming. Multiple missile launches from the airliner. The terrorists were trying to shoot down the rescue helicopters. Sea Knight 1, break right. Missil einbund. Sarah rolled the F-22 inverted and dove toward the airliner, placing herself between the helicopters and the incoming SA-24 missiles. The advanced countermeasures system on her aircraft began dispensing chaff and flares while she maneuvered to intercept the missiles. The first SA-24 streaked past her cockpit, missing by mere yards. The second missile was tracking directly toward the lead helicopter. Sarah had seconds to act. She pushed the F-22 into a vertical climb, placing herself directly in the missile's path. Her aircraft's radar signature was minimal, but at close range, the missile's heat-seeking guidance system locked onto her exhaust plume instead of the helicopter. The SA-24 exploded less than 50 feet from Sarah's aircraft. The blast wave threw the F-22 into an uncontrolled tumble, alarms screaming throughout the cockpit. She fought to regain control as the aircraft spun toward the ocean. Raptor 01, are you okay? Commander Ramsey's voice cut through the radio static. Sarah pulled hard on the stick, using every ounce of the F-22's advanced flight control system to recover from a spin. At 2,000 feet, she finally regained control and climbed back toward the engagement. I'm still here, Overlord. Continuing mission. But the situation had deteriorated rapidly. The helicopter pilots had been forced to break off their approach, and the airliner was now maneuvering erratically. Worse, Sarah's aircraft had sustained damage from the missile explosion. Her left engine was running rough, and several warning lights indicated problems with her electronic systems. Overlord, this is Sea Knight 1. We can't get close enough with those missile systems active. We need the target aircraft neutralized before we can attempt boarding. Admiral Hawkins' voice came through the encrypted channel. Raptor 01, you are authorized to disable the aircraft's offensive capabilities by any means necessary. Protect those helicopters. Sarah understood what she was being asked to do. She would have to fire on a civilian airliner to neutralize the terrorist weapon systems. It went against every instinct she had developed as a military pilot, but 312 innocent lives depended on her actions. She positioned the F-22 for an attack run, but instead of targeting the fuselage where passengers were located, Sarah aimed for the aircraft's engines. If she could disable the Boeing 777's propulsion, it would be forced to land, and the rescue operation could continue on the ground. Malaysia Airlines 447, this is your final warning. Land immediately, or I will be forced to disable your aircraft. The response came in the form of 2 more missile launches. The terrorists were determined to complete their mission, regardless of the consequences. Sarah squeezed the trigger, sending an AIM-120 AMRAAM toward the airliner's left engine. The missile struck with surgical precision, causing the engine to explode in a ball of flame and smoke. The Boeing 777 immediately began losing altitude and airspeed. But instead of attempting an emergency landing, the terrorists fired their remaining missiles at Sarah's aircraft. She found herself dodging 3 SA-24s while trying to protect the rescue helicopters and monitor the damaged airliner. Overlord, target aircraft is going down. I don't think they have control. The Boeing 777 was now in a steep dive toward the ocean. Sarah could see debris falling from the damaged engine, and the aircraft's flight path was becoming increasingly erratic. The pilots, whether they were terrorists or hostages, were struggling to maintain control. Raptor 01, can you assist with our landing approach? Sarah looked at the tactical situation and made a decision that would haunt her for years to come. The airliner was too badly damaged to reach any airport, but there was a small coral atoll about 30 miles to the southwest. If she could guide them to the shallow lagoon, the passengers might have a chance of survival. Overlord, I'm going to try to guide them to an emergency landing site. There's an atoll that might work. Negative, Raptor 01. Too risky. The aircraft could break up on impact, but Sarah was already moving into position alongside the damaged Boeing 777. Through the cockpit windows, she could see the pilots fighting desperately to control their aircraft. Behind them, passengers were pressed against the windows, their faces filled with terror. Using hand signals and radio transmissions, Sarah began guiding the airliner toward the atoll. The coral island was barely large enough for the massive aircraft, but the shallow lagoon might provide enough cushioning to prevent total destruction on impact. Malaysia Airlines 447, follow my lead. We're going to try for an emergency water landing. The airliner's pilot, Sarah, realized it was actually the original flight crew, not the terrorists, responded with a shaky voice. Roger, American fighter. We've lost most of our flight controls. Not sure we can make it. You can do this. I'll guide you in. What followed was the most challenging flying of Sarah's career. She had to position her damaged F-22 to provide visual guidance while accounting for wind conditions, the airliner's deteriorating flight characteristics, and the approaching SEAL helicopters. The Boeing 777 approached the atoll at twice the normal landing speed, its damaged engine trailing smoke and debris. Sarah flew alongside, calling out altitude and airspeed corrections while praying that the aircraft would hold together long enough to reach the lagoon. 500 feet, reduce speed if possible. 400 feet, looking good. 300 feet, you're lined up perfectly. The massive airliner struck the lagoon with tremendous force, sending up huge walls of water. The aircraft skipped across the surface twice before finally settling into the shallow water. Sarah held her breath, waiting to see if the fuselage would break apart. Incredibly, the Boeing 777 remained intact. Emergency slides began deploying from the exits as passengers and crew began evacuating onto the coral beaches of the small island. Overlord, successful emergency landing. Passengers evacuating. We need immediate rescue and medical support. The SEAL helicopters were already inbound, carrying medical teams and rescue equipment. Within minutes, they would be on the scene to assist with the evacuation and to capture any surviving terrorists. Sarah circled overhead, watching as hundreds of people emerged from the damaged airliner. Children, families, elderly passengers, all alive because of a split-second decision to prioritize human life over tactical considerations. Raptor 01, this is Admiral Hawkins. Outstanding work. You've saved 312 lives today. As Sarah began the long flight back to Edwards Air Force Base, she reflected on the events of the past few hours. 3 days ago, she had been an overlooked F-16 pilot wondering if her career would ever advance. Now she was returning from one of the most successful rescue missions in military history. But more importantly, she had proven something to herself and to everyone who had doubted her capabilities. When the moment of truth arrived, when everything was on the line and there was no room for error, she had risen to the challenge. Her radio crackled with a transmission from the Pentagon. "Captain Chun, this is General Rodriguez, Air Combat Command. When you return to base, we need to discuss your permanent assignment to the F-22 program." Sarah smiled inside her helmet. After 6 years of being passed over for advanced programs, the door had finally opened. But she realized now that the timing had been perfect. All those years of training, all those perfect flights that seemed to go unnoticed, had been preparing her for this moment. "General, I'm ready for whatever assignment serves the mission best." "Good answer, Captain. Or should I say, Major Chun. Your promotion came through while you were airborne." "Major." After 6 years as a captain, Sarah had finally received the recognition she deserved. But more than that, she had proven that talent and dedication could overcome any obstacle. As she approached Edwards Air Force Base, Sarah could see crowds of people gathered on the flight line. Word of the rescue mission had spread throughout the base, and everyone wanted to see the pilot who had saved 312 lives. Colonel Mitchell was waiting as she taxied the damaged F-22 to a stop. The aircraft showed clear signs of battle damage, with scorched paint and several panels missing from the missile near miss. But it had brought her home safely, just as she had brought home the passengers of Flight 447. "Major Chun," Colonel Mitchell said as she climbed down from the cockpit, "that was the finest piece of flying I've ever witnessed. You've brought great honor to the Air Force and to the F-22 program." The crowd erupted in applause as Sarah removed her helmet and shook out her hair. For the first time in her career, she wasn't invisible. Her skills had been recognized at the highest levels of command, and her future in military aviation was assured. That evening, Sarah called her parents from her quarters at Edwards. Her father answered on the first ring. "Sarah, we've been watching the news. They're saying an Air Force pilot saved hundreds of lives in some kind of rescue mission over the Pacific. Dad, I can't give you details, but I wanted you to know that everything you taught me about perseverance and preparation made the difference today. We're so proud of you, sweetheart." Your mother is crying, happy tears. Tell her I love her. And Dad, that opportunity you said would come eventually? It's here. 3 weeks later, Sarah was permanently assigned to the 27th Fighter Squadron at Langley Air Force Base, one of the premier F-22 units in the Air Force. She was given her choice of assignments and told that her expertise would be crucial in developing new tactics for the Raptor program. But more importantly, she had become a symbol within the military community. Young female officers would point to Major Sarah Chun as proof that excellence would eventually be recognized, regardless of gender or politics. The rescue of Malaysia Airlines Flight 447 became a case study taught at military academies around the world. It demonstrated the importance of individual initiative, the value of comprehensive training, and the power of making moral choices under extreme pressure. Sarah never forgot the faces of those children pressed against the airliner windows. In quiet moments, she would remember their terror and their gratitude, and she would know that all the years of being overlooked had been worth this single moment of making a difference. Her talent had finally been noticed, not through politics or favoritism, but through action when it mattered most. And in the years that followed, as she trained new pilots and led increasingly important missions, Sarah would always remember that sometimes the most important recognition comes not from awards or promotions, but from knowing that when lives were on the line, she had proven worthy of the trust placed in her. The little girl who had dreamed of flying had become a warrior in the sky, protecting others with the same dedication her parents had shown in protecting her dreams. It was the most perfect ending she could have imagined to a story that had begun with faith in herself when no one else seemed to notice her potential. Major Sarah Chun had finally found her place among the Eagles, and the sky would never be the same.